Hi, I'm Megan, mental health therapist, and I wanted to take a couple minutes. I'm early for an appointment, which is rare, and so I had some time to kill. So I thought I would make a video I've been wanting to do about grief. Grief has really been on my mind recently. I've been working with several moms in my practice who are going through grief due to pregnancy loss, infertility stuff. I just recently had couple good friends who have lost parents and loved ones. And I have been working this week on the program for my grandma's memorial service. So grief has been kind of a topic that's been on my mind. And I posted a blog article the other day about it. And I thought I'd make a video too. There's two analogies that I use to talk about grief that I wanted to share. Obviously, grief is such a loaded, difficult emotion. Most of us as humans go through grief in some form or another in our life. Obviously, most often we think about it in terms of the loss of a loved one, death. But I also want to name that grief can happen in so many other ways as well. Moving, loss of a place you loved, loss of a job, loss of a friendship that maybe shifted and changed. So when we think about grief, I want to broaden it to think about all of the different experiences that create loss in our lives and bring on these difficult, heavy feelings. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is the person who came up with the 5 stages of grief. I've later seen it developed into 7 stages of grief. I'm not going to list them all out here. I'll make a separate video on that because I'll probably forget one or another. But the important thing about these different stages, there are things like, denial, anger, depression, bargaining. I said I wasn't going to list them, but here I am listing them. But I know I'm not getting them all in order. But the important thing to know is that we don't go through them in a linear fashion. We rather move around through them, and they can sort of come and go and shift and change. And sometimes it's this whole ball of things all at once. And then the analogies that I really like to talk about are 2 things. Number 1, the grief jars, and number 2, thinking about waves. So I'm going to start with the waves. The idea is that grief can often feel like waves in an ocean, right? Sometimes you are standing at the edge of the ocean, playing in the surf, and the waves are just sort of like rolling in, sort of gently rolling over you. And other times there's a giant wave that sort of catches you off guard and knocks you over. And a lot of times that's what grief can feel like. This idea that, I'm sort of going through the motions and I'm okay. And then all of a sudden there's this huge wave that I'm just flooded with feelings of sadness and tearfulness. And when I'm working with clients, I often see them putting a lot of guilt and pressure on themselves for feeling like I should be over this by now. It's been, X amount of weeks or months or years, and feeling like, why do I still sometimes get knocked down? And that's just really the quality of grief, is that it does come in these waves, and sometimes it's big and sometimes it's small. The other analogy that I think is really helpful is what's called the grief jars. And you can I'll link below to the blog article so you can actually see a visual that I have there. But this idea that people are always talking about, time will heal your pain, things get better with time, it won't always be this hard. And we sometimes have this misperception that time is going to make the grief shrink. So in this imagery, you'll see there's these different jars, all the same size, and the thought that, like, if you imagine grief like a ball inside the jar, that ball shrinks over time. And the reality is that's not what happened. The grief is always there. We're always going to have a piece, sort of feeling sad or missing, especially if it's a loved one or something really important to us that we lost. But what happens is that you grow around the grief. So you'll see in this other depiction of the jars that the grief ball stays the same size, but the jar grows. And so this idea that you grow around the grief, and I think the caption I have there is, we think that time heals grief. Really, we grow around the grief. And so I just think this is a really important message for anyone who is going through grief and kind of stuck in this shame spiral or this guilt around, why isn't this getting easier? Why Do I feel like maybe one day I'm a little better and then all of a sudden I get knocked back again? So just knowing that that's completely normal. It's normal to have those waves. It's normal to go through all of those different stages of grief, and for it not to be a nice linear thing, for it to be kind of all jumbled up and in one feeling and then out of it and then into another and then maybe back to one you already experienced again. And just know that as time progresses, the grief isn't shrinking, but you are truly growing around it. And there will come a day where you look back and you're like, wow, I'm not as sad as I used to be. I'm still sad. I still miss this thing or this person in my life deeply. I still care deeply, but I don't feel like there's as many tidal waves knocking me down. So for anyone out there that's grieving, sending you lots of love. Just know that this is a process. Be patient with yourself. Expect the ups and downs. Expect that some days are going to feel easier than others. There's no timeline. There's no timetable. You're on track, and whatever you're feeling is completely valid. If you need more support, reach out. There are lots of providers out there who can be really helpful in helping you find ways to move through the grief. If you have comments, if you have questions, let me know below, and I hope this is helpful.